Hi YouTube, this is Evie. Welcome back to my channel, and you may have noticed the lighting is very fancy today, and I have a special guest. This is Brittany. She has her own channel on YouTube where she talks about BDSM and poly and even some videos about feminism and like feminist reviews of movies and such. So if you want to follow her, I would highly recommend you do. She's one of my favorite YouTubers, and she's really great. So I will put a link to her channel down below. But today for my video, I am going to be talking about brats and bratting in BDSM because I have had a lot of you guys ask questions about this, and I do not know how to answer this. If you guys haven't figured this out from my other videos and from just things I've talked about and shared on my channel, I am very much a service submissive. I am kind of a goody two-shoes. I have a very difficult time bratting and talking back. It's very much not in my nature to do that kind of thing. So I thought I would bring somebody on who very much does that kind of thing in her everyday dynamic.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to ask you is, what is bratting? What does it mean to you? And yeah.
So in BDSM and kink, I'm definitely a submissive. Like, I have a collar, I'm owned, all those things. And there's a difference from being disrespectful to your dom in your relationship and then being a brat. And being a brat often has to do with the nature of the dynamic and like the delivery of your actions. So often you'll see brats be like, I don't wanna. And like, it's a little different than littles who act like children who are bratty. It's like constantly defiant. It's more like, you can't tell me what to do. And it's more like doing the things you know, like you're not supposed to do. Like sometimes, like sometimes if he's like, do the dishes this way specifically, I'm like, oh, this way specifically? And then I'll do it in the opposite way. It's more like, it's a mini challenge of like, but you do it with a grin and an eyebrow, like up and down. And that's the key of me being like, I'm about to be so bratty. And like, you either have to put me in my place or I'm gonna be like, ow. And I think a lot of the dynamic is very fun. I think it's just a very fun expression and a very fun, like, because usually it ends up with your dom like coming at you and spanking you, and a lot of it giggles, and then it might turn into tears depending on how big the impact becomes. But I think fun is the element there.
Yeah, I definitely think I associate like brats, and all the people I know that are brats, it's a very, their scenes tend to definitely be a very lively, very lively. And I think it's funny because for me, what I do is I think about the things I could do that are bad in my head, but then I never do them. I only think about them because I can't commit a thought crime. So,
oh my god, yeah. I am so bad. I think about every single one. I'm like, which one's the worst? What is the punishment associated with this bad behavior?
Oh, actually, thinking about punishment. How does bratting relate to masochism and desire for pain?
I would say it differs on the person and like their bratting. When I brat, there is two versions of Brittany's brat. There's a playful, funny brat that like, if you hurt me, I'll be like, why? And then there's the brat that's like the chaos child, who's more like, is this on the table? Is this organized? You know, and then you push it onto the ground, and it's a very deliberate, like, I need you to hurt me, but I don't want to ask for it, and I want it to be that sort of dynamic where like you have like I fight and I upset you enough to do it, and it's a very understood dynamic. It's a, he can, like, we've negotiated, he can tell the moment it's happening, and he'll usually use keywords like, little one, do you want to please me right now? And I'm like, I don't know. Does that mean I can't do what I want? I mean, it's a very specific tone. And so if I say, you know, if I was to say, yes sir, I would like to, he knows that I'm not bratting, I'm asking for help, but I don't want to admit I'm asking for help. But when I'm bratting, I'll give like a brat answer. So the masochism is definitely rooted in the like, I'm gonna fuck your day up in a bratty way that I know is within allowance. Like, I would never do something like, if I ever take off my collar in anger, it's not a brat move. It's a, holy fuck, are we about to break up? Like, those are some of the indicators of like, this is not a brat move. Things of that nature. Or, you know, sometimes I'll tell him like, you're not in charge, I'm in charge. Or sometimes if I'm being like super cheeky, I'll be like, who's my good little boy? And that is like,
anything to try to like change the power exchange dynamic.
That lands me a good whooping of fun. And like, usually, I swear to God, most of it lands in laughter. But if it's a masochistic thing I need, I usually just need to cry. Like, crying is so euphoric for me. It releases all of that ugly tension that I have that I can't get out any other way. And it's really nice.
How do you deal with times where maybe you really want to be bratty, but then he's just like, I just want you to listen to me for once today, Brittany. How do you deal with that kind of thing? It was not too personal. But
No, so this has actually been one of the hardest parts of our dynamic because I am always confrontational, like with everyone. I've always been that way as a child. Like I'm that way as an adult. Like I'm constantly like, I'm sorry, what did you say to me? And so I turn that into a brat mode and it becomes playful in our dynamic. But there are some days when he's tired. Some days when I've done it too many days in a row. And I have the energy of like a caffeine-ridden child who's just like, I'm totally, and he doesn't. Like he crashes just like any other person does. So usually it's communicated through very specific wording. This allows him to tell me where he is, and it allows me to dial back my bratness or that need for that specific kind of attention. And that is where, because it is rare when he's in that mode, that I go into the very rare submissive, like service submissive mode. And it doesn't last long. Because once he shows a little bit of energy, I'm like, yay, play with me!
Yay, I get to be going back to being
yeah, I'm gonna poke you now. Oh, I'm poking the bear is like, sir, 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 sir. Up his nose, sir.
Oh, God.
Pay attention to me.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so kind of going off of that, how in depth should you be with negotiating for being a brat? Because in my experience, a lot of people, it can be very difficult to negotiate well for bratting.
For a DS dynamic or a top bottom?
Why don't we talk about top bottom first?
So when I'm with a top, and it's a brat scene, it's usually not somebody that I have like a long-term relationship with. It's usually somebody that's like a friend. So I'll give an example of like her sir and I actually did a scene where it was the rope scene that I've posted pictures of on the internet and things of that nature. But that scene was really awesome because it was completely organic for the most part. We negotiated very basic things, right? Like no genitals, no torturing me in the X, Y, and Z ways. And, we kind of talked about that. But as the scene progressed, it grew into this kind of like, because he really reacts positively to brats. Like it was really well done, and he knows I'm masochistic, so it was very complimentary to our style as a power dynamic. The reason it could go so organically without knowing exactly every detail of how I would brat and how he would react was because he's seen us, I think he's known us for at least a year now, and he's seen us in so many scenes, and he's seen Christopher and I play, and there was a level of intimacy and knowledge there that allowed that to happen. What I would normally do, though, if I was bratty with somebody who didn't quite know me that well, and I have had those scenes happen, is I usually say, first and foremost, I'm like, I'm a brat. Do we want the brat? Do we not want the brat? Should I put her away for the night? And that's really difficult. Most people actually pretty much enjoy the brat, but there are certain limits, right? Like I can't hit them back. We'll talk about that. One of my strictest rules for temporary partners is that you cannot touch my genitals. A lot of that is just like the intimacy is too intense, and for a brat, like if you touch my genitals as a brat, I think I'd be like, okay, shing. That is my reaction. But brats and tops usually, like whack scenes are a great example, or little electrical scenes are really great examples. You can do a scene specifically, like casually, where you serve me for the night, but you might fuck up on an order once or twice. Like make it interesting for me. So that'd be kind of fun. In terms of a DS relationship, I think it grows organically and intimately, and it just becomes like daily routine, honestly.
Yeah, so
like, to be totally fair.
So let's say maybe you had somebody who was previously in a top-bottom relationship, and they want to progress that to a DS relationship. What sort of additional things would they need to talk about in order to make that transition successful?
As a brat?
Yeah.
A brat is like a personality trait. You can take it with you wherever you go. So the reason it's complementary to the life of a submissive, I think, is it just adds a different spice to the soup bowl. God, I'm hungry. And so, I'm hungry again, okay?
We'll have dessert after this.
So I know the cues in which how I'm supposed to be reacting based off the relationship I've negotiated for. So at high protocol dinner dates, I'm never a brat. At play parties, I'm like, can I be a brat tonight? And it's more like, where's our energy at? How do I feel? And if I go to a play party where we're just kind of like casually ourselves, but then I go, sir, sir, sir. It's kind of, that's where that's going into. All of it is about negotiating, but also just knowing, like, playing off the moods and the chemistry of your partner. What are we feeling tonight? Does your partner really need this sort of back and forth from you? It's kind of like having a really good conversation with someone. Is it a heated and passionate? Is it slow and relaxing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think it's kind of, to say that another way, it's important to be in touch with what your partner is feeling and then being in touch with what you want and being able to sort of balance these things without necessarily expressing with words what you want. And I think it's also okay to say with words like, I want to be your brat tonight. Is that okay? And then, you know, maybe they'll say yes, maybe they'll say no.
I think one of the other parts of BDSM that people get really confused about is, yes, you can negotiate everything up front, but sometimes things get forgotten. So always have it in place where, like, if somebody does something that hasn't been technically negotiated, you can say, oh, we didn't negotiate that, I'm not into that. Like, have a safe word in place. It happens a lot. Organically, things occur, and it's just, you know, you're supposed to be an adult when you do BDSM, so if you're an adult and you're doing this, you should have enough agency to be able to communicate, like, yellow, we didn't negotiate this, how do we feel about it, let's do it real fast. Like, I was doing a waxing with somebody, and they were like, mid-scene, they're like, oh, can I bite your nipples? Like, it didn't stop the thing of the scene, but I was like, I thought about it, and I was like, yes, and it became like a thing that happened. But I could have said no, and it still would have just continued. That is when you have a good dynamic as well, like, just a good, where no one's gonna get their feelings hurt. It's not about hurting your feelings, it's about being safe in your space.
Yep. So going back to something that got mentioned earlier when we first started this video, you mentioned that it's different from being a little or being into DDLG. Can you expand more on what the differences are between being a brat and, say, being a little, or sort of how they might be similar, how they might play with each other?
So I found when I've interacted with littles who are also masochists and brats, that when they're in little space, it's more of an innocent sort of endeavor. Like their brattiness isn't as maliciously intended as like mine would be. So they do it more like what do you mean I can't have it? What do you mean? Versus I'm like,
takes all the cookies out of the jar.
yeah, like, and I'm more like, what do you mean I can't have it? It's a very different tone, and I think it just, the difference is like kind of an innocent Disney element versus like a Marvel movie where it's like, what? And I think that's pretty much the only difference. I dated a girl who's a little and a masochist and, you know, a brat and everything, and her and I together when we would brat out was like the funniest thing you'd ever see. And it was just, it's very different because I'd be like, I'm bigger and older when I wasn't, but like when she's 4, I am older. So it was very funny, and it became like this really cute dynamic. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, so I also have some questions from Instagram that you guys asked, so I'm going to go ahead and get to those.
Instagram!
Yeah. If you guys haven't followed my Instagram, I will leave a link down below, as well as a link to Brittany's Instagram if you want to follow us. So how to pronounce his name? I think it's Nith Pantiel asked, what are some ways a brat can balance out with obedience so as to not make the top dom feel like their authority is useless? I think we've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but how to sort of maintain the power dynamic while being a brat.
We have definitely had moments, Christopher and I, my dom, where he'll say things like, little one, I'm tired. I've given you your rules. If you're not going to follow them, I'm not going to pay attention to you.
That's the worst thing.
Girl, things just got serious. But like, that's what it feels like. The whole point, I think, of being a brat is like, you want the attention. So, I know I'm 27, but I've been put in the corner many times by Christopher. The best thing is, like, the worst thing he ever did to me is he put me on the corner, and every time I turned around, he added 10 minutes.
Oh no.
It was so bad. So it was like so hard to like not, and it started with like 40 minutes. It didn't even start off with 10.
Wow.
So I was like,
2 hours later.
And I couldn't talk, so I couldn't be like, is it over yet? Like, I had to just stare at a wall. But you know what? It was really soothing. He stayed behind me, and on occasion would even pet me to, like, let me know that he was there. Remember, it's never about neglect. It's about reinforcing the wanted and needed desires by both parties. And I need the attention, but I also need the structure, and I need the discipline. It feels that weirdness inside me.
So, something else I want to talk about that I probably should have done at the beginning of this video is, how is being a brat different from topping from the bottom? And, yeah, I think that's something really important to talk about, because I feel like I see topping from the bottom happen so much, and it's something I very am adamantly against, So
in the beginning, there was a lot of, Christopher would tell me, he's like, you are not topping me from the bottom. This is not the dynamic we're having. I'm like, are you sure? Are you positive? And this is going to sound totally ridiculous, but the whole reason he is in charge is because he's bigger and stronger than I am. And he wants to be. I don't want to be. And I think the difference is that I want to be in charge of all the weird stuff, like the finances and the chore wheel. But I don't actually, in those moments of like, DS is so intimate and personal, and it's about really taking care of another person in a very specific way, in a way where, they can really lean on you, and the talents of a dom and the talents of submissive are different. They are dependent on your relationship, but they're different for that reason. It's like a yin and yang. And so the difference is the intent. When I push him, it's not because I actually want to be in charge, it's because I want to be reminded of my place. Like, there's nothing more rewarding than, than a dom who's like, okay, my turn. Like, he'll let me do it where I'm really batty some days, and he'll let me go for like a half an hour. One time, he even was like, I was like, be a good boy and lean back for me, and he went like this. And he laid down, and he's like, now what? And I was like, I don't know, you do it, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I was like, don't give me what I want, or what I think, what I say I want. So I think that's the difference.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. So, what are some good, I don't want to necessarily say brat activities, but what are good ways to sort of initiate a brat scene or get a brat scene started?
Sir,
Yeah,
sir,
poking.
sir. Pretty much, or being like, sir, and him being like, what? Or she being like, what? And you're just like, nothing. Sir.
So basically, anything annoying you may have done in elementary school?
Be as antagonistic as possible. Obviously, within the safety of, like, make sure they're not doing something dangerous, like holding a knife, and you're, like, distracting them. But I think that is always the way that we have done it, is that I just, I get that tone of voice, which is very different than, sir. It's more like, sir. Like, you're excited, like you're at Disneyland, like, sir. Almost like you're a kid on crack.
Yeah, or like for me, it's like a playful dog. Like, that's how I think of it when you're in that voice. That's to me is like my excited dog voice almost.
I was gonna say, on those times that I'm like in kitten space, I'm like, meow, meow.
Oh my god, bratty kitten. Actually, yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
How does bratting overlap with your other kinks or your other dynamics, if it does?
Yeah, well, with the I'm getting more comfortable identifying sort of as like a kitten in BDSM space. I roll my eyes because I'm more like a jaguar who's more like, I'm the queen of this jungle. I don't know if I want to fuck with you right now. But I've gotten definitely more like playful kitten as of late with Christopher, mostly because I'm comfortable doing it. So I have like a little kitten collar and like ears and stuff. And I'm definitely like a bratty kitten where it's like, meow, 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 meow. What's that comic of that cat that just like annoys the fuck out of everyone? That's me. And it's I like to be petted, and I don't like to be ignored, so it's more like, why aren't you paying attention to me?
So it sounds like bratting overlaps very well with kitten play, and that actually makes a lot of sense, because most of the brats I know are also kittens, and cats naturally, most cats, 99% of cats, are just assholes.
Yes, totally. It complements very well.
Yes, it does go together very well. But that's really all the questions I had for you. Thank you so much for being on my channel. I am sure we're going to do more videos in the future. If you guys have any questions or comments or suggestions or anything like that, please leave that down below. Either Brittany or I will answer. If you have any suggestions for future videos, as always, please feel free to leave that down below as well. And until I see you next time, have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.